Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to another episode of Melon Live. I'm Travanti here. Man, hope you guys had a great week. Last week we talked about some great stuff. Got some new info. Want to talk with you guys, learn some stuff about streaming, making content. So if you have any questions, comments, new features you want to see with Melon, please put it in the comments. Let us know. Melon has a free and a paid version. If you haven't, check it out. Great features like multi-streaming to multiple destinations, 12 participants, uh, background audio updates, portrait mode if you want to stream to Instagram or like some create content in that 9:16 format. And we're always adding new features. So please check out Melon. If you have any questions, support at melonapp.com, and we're here to help. So last week we talked about building communities and driving engagement with live streaming, right? And how helpful that is to grow with your business and your content. And even personally for myself, just using how I've learned how to build communities and use that for my personal life as far as business, and also me being a community manager at Melon, what I've learned and things that I picked up across the way. So this week I'm going to talk about the perfect balance between stream length and then the quality, right? A lot of times people ask like, oh, I want to go live, but I'm not sure exactly how long I should go live for. What do I talk about? So I want to go over a couple things that will help you kind of decide and figure out what kind of plan that you need to make as far as your live stream. So you can pick out how long you want to go for your stream. And, different examples of different types of content and the links that they kind of go through. And again, if you got questions, let me know in the chat. I'm here to help. So let's get into it. So the ideal length for a live stream, right? I wish I could be like, oh, it's this or it's this, but really the ideal length for a live stream, it depends on a lot of factors, right? So it's not a one set process, right? It depends on your topic. It depends on your audience. It depends on what platform you're streaming to, right? It's a bunch of factors that kind of vary into that, right? But the best thing as a content creator that you could do is test different things, right? Try shorter length, try longer length streams, and see what your audience responds to, right? And I'm going to go over some of the analytics that you look at, some of the responses that you want to look at to see what gives you the best results, right? So in the beginning, ideally, for me, it's easier to start off short streams, just because it's not overwhelming. I feel like sometimes in the beginning, people think like, oh, I'm going to stream for an hour, and they don't realize how many talking points and how fast that time goes by. Like I've been a DJ since I was like a kid, right? And one of my main fears would be to run out of songs before the party's over, right? Because then what do? Is like you got to fill all this time, and you still have 2 hours left to go. And it's kind of like that with live streaming, right? You got to figure out how to fill that time slot, right? And you want to keep it engaged, high energy. And so with streaming, it's easier to start off shorter, and then you can kind of work your way up. But it's pros and cons to both sides, right? So short streams, to me, they're easier to digest, right? It's immediate action, right? Longer streams, they build better relationships to me though. Like on Twitch, you see a lot of the people that's in the just chatting or the IRL kind of streams. To me, their community is really engaged because you're spending so much time with that person, right? But it's hard to get people to watch you for that long. So you need something to kind of introduce yourself to that. So that's why I think short streams and then taking your content and making clips is so important, because then you're introducing people to your personality and your content, and then they're prepared for those longer streams. But just trying to do long streams and people don't know who you are, to me, sometimes it's a little barrier to entry. But ultimately, the goal is context, right? And you want to add value, and you want the content to be relevant to that person, right? So a lot of times if I'm streaming, if people don't have questions, I get off, because I don't want to waste people's time. I want to make sure that it's engaging, it's short and to the point. And then I'm using this stream for its purpose, right? It's to educate, and then also to make clips so I can repurpose them, right? So long as I'm hitting those goals, that's how long the stream is for me, right? So that's what I try to focus on. I try not to just be on here just to be on here or use a lot of filler, which you'll see sometimes people because they want to stay on for a certain period of time due to ads or whatever it is their reasoning. But to me, it's based on the content and keeping people engaged. So it's a bunch of factors that kind of help you decide this, right? So you want to look at your average concurrent viewers, you want to look at your retention, and this is all stuff you can see in your analytics. Like if you're streaming on Twitch, YouTube, any of these platforms, you can go in the back end and see your analytics, right? And seeing this and seeing where people are dropping off at, seeing where people are coming in at, and how long you're keeping their attention, all of this kind of helps decide, right? Because if you see that people are watching for 15 to 20 minutes and then they're dropping off, then you might want to lean towards a shorter stream. But if you see people are staying with you and they're really engaged, then longer streams might work. And then you got to consider the format. So sometimes if you're doing like Q&As, if you're doing interviews, they're going to run a little bit longer. So just keeping that in mind and knowing what kind of content you want to make and kind of reverse engineering that, like working backwards from there. If you want to do like educational stuff and then have a QA at the end, it's probably going to be, I'd say 30, 45 minutes, sometimes an hour, depending on what you're teaching, right? But if you're just doing like checking in with people just to reach the audience and just to talk with people, sometimes those are a little bit shorter. So it all depends on, again, the content that you're making in your audience. And then, it's other factors like time constraints, engagement levels, retention. All of those are really important factors to determine like, okay, I'm going to base my stream around a longer stream or a shorter stream. I was doing a podcast for a long time, and originally we were streaming for 2 hours. The podcast would be 2 hours, and we made a decision to cut it down because people would be in there throughout the 2 hours, but we could cut out sections and make it more engaging and then cut it down to an hour or 45 minutes. And to me, it gave a much better response, right? So just being aware and looking at the analytics on the back end and seeing where you can kind of optimize things is always the best. So it's not like a one size fit all thing when it comes to like live streaming and the length of your stream, but always look at how people are responding. So examples, right? So short streams, like I was saying, like IG Live, TikTok Live, going on there and just talking with people for a second. A lot of times those are typically shorter streams, right? They're not it's super long. They're just more engaging, connecting with the people. You see longer streams on like YouTube, Facebook Live. People will do more like in-depth kind of stuff. They'll do more like product demonstrations, interviews, panels. You see more of that kind of stuff. And again, those are like maybe 45 minutes to an hour. Podcasts are also the same way. 45 minutes to an hour, sometimes a little bit longer, but that's typically the links that you kind of see for that kind of content. Entertainment kind of stuff, like you see it a lot in the gaming community. They stream all day. You'll see gamers streaming for 5-6 hours, right? But that's kind of how the community is, right? Because they're being entertained by the gaming, and it's not necessarily them talking. So sometimes, depending on your content, again, it kind of determines what you want to do. So that's what I would look at. If you guys are more into like tutorial type stuff, I would aim for 45 minutes is great. If you can't do that, shrink it down and work your way back up. But don't feel pressured that you have to stream super long. Again, it's about the content. It's about you being comfortable, about, you being able to speak and feel like, okay, this is going somewhere. Because sometimes it's tiring talking for 2 hours and trying to keep the conversation going and keep things moving. It could be very tiring and like a lot to keep up with. So don't feel pressured that you have to do that immediately. Work your way up to it, start small, and go from there. So again, you want to try to build a loyal audience. And we talked a lot about that in the community conversation. So if you didn't check that out, go back, check out our conversation about building community. But the more that you talk with people, the more that you interact with people, to me, the more loyal and they grow with you, right? And they're more likely to spend a lot of time in your streams, right? So that's what you kind of want to build up to, but giving people smaller pieces of the content that to kind of engage with. And I really like the local recording feature on Melon because you can take different assets like the audio, you can take the video, and you could cut these up into different things. So if you want to make a YouTube video out of your live stream, it's super easy. And then take that up and make TikTok shorts, reels. Super easy to kind of take content and repurpose it, right? Which makes it easier to get more people to your live stream. And you see a lot of people use this system, right? Gary Vee talks about this all the time. That's a guy named Alex Hormozy. He talks about it. He's all over like Instagram and Twitter. Really buff guy, wear jean shorts all the time, but his content is everywhere. And a lot of times what they'll do is they're live streaming and they're teaching, conversating, right? And they're using the chat to see, okay, this is something that people want to talk about. And then they find it, they cut all the clips, and whatever clips get a lot of engagement, they use that to keep creating content off of that. So it's always like a never ending content supply, right? And that's how a lot of people are able to keep up with so much content. But the hub of that is live streaming, right? And creating that long form piece of content and then breaking it down. So it's no set rules to broadcasting. You know, again, you have to create for yourself and create what's comfortable for you. But again, looking at the analytics, looking at the data, all of this stuff will help you kind of form your decisions. And you want it to reflect your brand. You want it to reflect how you want to come across. So if it's a short stream and it's action packed, you know, to me, that's more important than having a long stream with a bunch of like boring or like dull moments in there. Is this Twitch streamer I've been watching recently? He's become the #1 Twitch streamer, I feel like, in the United States. He did a 24-hour stream recently, and every hour he had different series of events. He had people bring animals into his house. He had a cook come and they cooked live. He had a band come in. So it was action packed. So it was a really long stream, but it was very thought out to keep the audience engaged, right? It was always something new happening and exciting happening. So people wanted to watch, and people were talking about they stayed up for 24 hours with him watching it, right? So we don't have to take it to that extreme, but we can learn from that and see, okay, cool, this is how we can embellish and make our content a little more exciting. And then you also you want to think about when you're creating this stuff. I try to think about what clips that I do want to get from this, right? I'm trying to get better about cutting up clips and posting more stuff on the Melon social medias. So you'll see me like talk about topics on the Melon social media. And so to get that clip, because doing it live sometimes you forget details and everything's all on the whim. So I try to plan out what clips that I want beforehand, right? So before I even start doing the live, I know that I want to talk about this and I want to aim to get this kind of clip. So I can make sure that I'm talking about that in full detail. I'm not missing anything. So when I do cut that clip out, the context is great. And that will help add on to the length of your actual show, right? Having segments, having different parts that that are going to be in your show every time. To me, it helps add to the value, right? When I first started doing the show, I was scared. I was new. So I was like, oh man, 15 minutes was like the most I could do. And I was like, oh man, that felt like forever. But now I come on here, we could talk for hour 30, and it's not a big deal because I understand now more about creating segments and breaking stuff up into little pieces so I can either expand or kind of subtract and go from there. So the challenges that you will face, right? If you do shorter videos, to me, it builds an audience quicker. It's easy to get into, but again, I feel like people don't connect with you as much, right? To where longer videos, the audience will connect with you, but getting people to stick is a lot harder, right? And then the chances of being tired and burnt out from streaming is much higher when you're streaming for long periods of time. Like streaming's a job, it's not hard. It doesn't have Melon makes streaming super easy. So all the technical stuff, but you still have to, you're putting time and energy in this, so just be aware of how you're feeling. Make sure you're drinking water, make sure, you're taking care of yourself because it can get a little hectic at times. But I will say Melon makes it a lot easier, because before, when I was streaming on a different platform, and it was so many issues that I would run into trying to figure out certain parts. And to me, Melon makes it way easier, right? It makes, from scheduling, from streaming to multiple destinations, to handling the chat, all of the stuff that normally is more difficult. I feel like it's super easy, couple clicks, and then you can get everything set up. And again, if you have questions, let me know in the chat. I'm here to help. Anything you want to talk about, I'm here to help. So again, and then with streaming for a long period of time, distractions, that's always the thing that's going to happen. I've been trying to keep my daughter from running in here all the time. Different stuff at phone calls, all that stuff happens, right? Life happens. So there's just something to be aware of just to be conscious. And the more you're conscious of those kind of things, you're more prepared for it. But practice is really what's going to change and get you to that point of knowing where that sweet spot is for the length of your content, right? Okay, so we're going to go over some tips to keep your content engaged, and then kind of figuring out the best times. So with short videos, you want to use graphics, you want to use overlays, you want to keep the engagement high, right? Especially with TikTok and reels and shorts. I feel like people's attention spans are so short, and we're so used to seeing so much so quickly that you kind of have to keep up with that pace in a way. You got to understand how to play the game on that platform, right? And with live streaming, of course, we're streaming on these other platforms like YouTube and all that. But again, you want to repurpose if you can, right? You want to put your content everywhere. So to me, using different stuff like that, using the overlays and Melon, using the ticker like I have at the bottom, all this stuff keeps it more engaging, right? And then when you repurpose it, it shows up and you don't really have to do too much. And you want to be concise, step-by-step details, straight to the point. Especially for short form, you don't want people to have to like wait and scroll through. With long form, you should focus on like answering questions, giving examples, showing stuff. And it's great, like using the screen share on Melon. To me, you can get really detailed, right? And you could show different aspects of anything. And even with the multiple cameras, I'm excited to start like using multiple cameras so I can start doing like DJ streams and teaching different stuff like that, and being able to show different angles. And I'm excited with that. I got some new cameras. I showed them off last week, but I got the Mevo, and I got another webcam. So I'm gonna have that set up along with my camera and do some cool angles and be able to teach different stuff and switch between that. And it's so many different ways. I've seen people use it for art. I've seen people use it for cooking. For churches, I see people use it and they use different angles and directions. So you could get it close up, different feels from different angles and different stuff like that. So it's always cool just to have those features. So if you're live streaming, it's a bunch of platforms that kind of give you, so YouTube has their backend analytics, Twitch has their backend analytics, right? But it's other platforms like it's a plugin called TubeBuddy. It's one called vidIQ. What they do is they give you more insights. They're more like precise with the insights. So look into those if you really want to like hone in and get very like be able to split test like thumbnails and all this stuff. But all of that adds into knowing kind of where the audience is, where they're falling off. And a lot of people that I know that's in the content creation game, they're very meticulous about the retention and their average concurrent viewers. They're really aware of that, right? I was listening again. I keep talking about this podcast with Mr. Beast that I was listening to, maybe 3 hours, and him just talking about content. And he always would say somebody would do something. He's like, "Oh, that's terrible for retention." So it's like that's all he's thinking about is like, how do I keep people on here, right? So now it's got me more aware, and I'm thinking about that more of how do I keep people engaged? How do I keep people on here? And what's going to take away from people being engaged and what's going to encourage people? So, just passing info along, make sure that you always kind of thinking in that way. And I feel like it'll make your content better. Weekends could be a good time to stream, and give you a little bit longer because during the week people are busy, they're working, school's going on, you got do stuff with the family, do chores and all that stuff. Weekend, I feel like, yes, people are out and about, but also people have more downtime. So it could be a good time to stream, and have longer to stream, right? You'll see a lot of people on Saturdays and Sundays really streaming for a long time than opposed to during the week where it's a little more hectic, and life is a little more tricky to do stuff like that, not just for the streamer but the actual viewer. um and of course, when you're having a guest, you just want to make sure you're resetting the room, you're staying focused, you're allowing them to ask questions, but you're staying on topic, because sometimes when you have a guest, it's easy to ramble and get off topic and then run over time. But you want to respect the guest time. And I feel like having a format and keeping it concise is super easy, especially for editing and anything on the back end, right? You want the more concise and more structured it is, the less stuff that you got to cut out and worry about on the back end. So I try to keep it somewhat structured. A lot of the fun moments to me are the tangents, right? But keeping it somewhere kind of structured is always very helpful. So we haven't talked about this feature in a while, but to me, it's a great feature. Here, I'm going to show my screen. It's a great feature. If you guys aren't using this, please try it out. So we have portrait mode. So what portrait mode does is you're able to stream in the 9:16 view, right? The 9:16 is like what you see on TikTok, Instagram Reels, that mobile view, right? So the way everything is going, it's more and more important to be able to create content for the landscape, right? So streaming on these kind of platforms, or if you want to just record, the way I use it is I record in this. So if I want to make TikToks and I just want to talk, or create content, I'll put it in here and I'll record, and then just cut it up on the back end. So to me, that's a very easy way to create a lot of content, right? If you want to teach something, educate, record it in this, and then you don't have to do all the extra stuff of changing the dimensions and doing all this stuff later on. It's already done for you. So that's what I do. So portrait mode is super easy to set up. So before you go live, before you press record, you just hit this mobile phone right here. Here, let me change my screen view. There we go. Make it a little bit bigger. So with this button, the mobile button right here, it will change it to portrait mode. And we have Veronica, the Melon OG here. She's the one that's like making it happen behind the scenes. So you can see her here showing off the portrait mode. And in studio, this is how it looks. And on Facebook, this is how it looks. And to me, it's great because sometimes when you're streaming it in the wider view, you don't get a great a great view of how it's going to look when it's cut down. But with this, you already know what it's going to look like, so you know how to frame like correctly. Because sometimes I see videos and it's either people are trying to shrink it down to make it fit that 9:16, and you got the black borders at the top, or they're stretching it out and it's not really connecting, right? It's not the right proportion. But with this, you don't have to worry about any of that. You could still do banners, you still could do tickers. And the craziest part about it is you could add multiple participants. We've had meetings in this mode and you can add up to 12 people in this. So if you want to do panels, different stuff like that, it's super easy. And we have a guide on how to set up, like if you want to stream to like a destination like Instagram using our custom RTMP. So we have a guide on melon.com about how to do that. So if you guys don't have any questions, I'm going to get out of here. But next week, I got some cool stuff. Again, more topics to talk about, more helpful tips. They're working on some new updates, so I'm excited to, when those roll out, to be able to announce it. We've had a couple little smaller updates, I would say, like Facebook, how the events, when you schedule, it's a little different. So now you got more, up to 7 days, they'll show the event. So that's really cool. LinkedIn recently changed their requirements for live streaming. So a lot more people will be able to stream through that LinkedIn. So that's really cool. And then we got a bunch of new features that people requested from the community that are coming soon. So I'm excited to announce those when those are ready. If you haven't joined the Facebook community, the Melon community on Facebook, it's super great. You got experienced streamers, you got new streamers, and everybody in between, all helping each other. So it's a great place to be if you want to learn stuff about content creation. So please join. We'd love to have you. And again, if you see if you're in there or on socials, you're probably talking to me a lot of the time. So love to chat with you, learn more about content creation and live streaming. And if you have questions, like say you're in Melon and you want to know how something works, or you stuck on something, shoot us a message. We're more than happy to help and walk you through it. So if that's all the questions, I'm going to get out of here. I hope you guys have a great week. Please create some content, tag us on social medias. We'd love to see what you guys are working on. And it's always cool to see how you guys are using Melon. So please tag us on social media. We'd love to see your content and hear more about what you're working on. So have a good week. See you next week. Thank you.